Wednesday stream with myself, Kyle Dvorchak, and former Million Maker winner Bobby Gomes. Bobby, how is it going tonight?
It's good. Interesting day. They were bringing Jonas Gray reunion day or whatever. So got a mention in ESPN, the magazine. It was pretty
nice.
ESPN, not the magazine. What am I talking about? ESPN, just ESPN.com. So
cool. Very fun. Very fun. I did not know that was this was the anniversary of such a meaningful event in your life, and one I hardly remember.
Yeah, you're a fish though, so.
Or I was like a child.
Yeah, you might have been a child.
I think I legally I 100% legally was a child at that point. All right, ready to get into week I don't know, this is probably 11.
Yeah, let's hop right in.
All right, first game I have on the slate is probably at the top of my list because it does not have any Vegas numbers yet, so it's not too easy to talk about. It's Detroit versus Dallas. Detroit at home will probably be underdogs even if Stafford plays. If Driscoll plays, and really it doesn't seem like there's a strong lean whether he plays or not. If Driscoll plays, they will be major underdogs. I think I've seen like 7 or 8. With Stafford's closer to like 3. 51.5 point total right now. That's probably pretty speculative. I would think that comes down heavily once honestly either quarterback gets announced the starter. So any interest in honestly any Lions if Driscoll plays?
Not really. It'd be really tough to rock the Lions in that situation. Yeah, I just couldn't find myself doing it. At 40, it'd just be Zeke and pretty much the Cowboys D for me.
Yeah, I agree. Driscoll threw for 269 last week, but a big chunk of that came on the long Kenny Golladay touchdown, I believe, and it was honestly pretty fortunate that it worked out that way. I think like the defender kind of misplayed it and fell down as they went for it. Really, it's 220 or so game, 230-yard game with no touchdowns and a pick on a ton of attempts, on 46 attempts. Without that play, it's an awful game. So not really interested in receivers. I think J.D. McKissic maybe has some value if Ty Johnson doesn't play. McKissic out-touched Paul Perkins 10-7, so I think it's reasonable to expect he gets half or more of the team's carries. And obviously we've seen him used as like a pretty talented pass catcher out of the backfield. Got 6 catches last week. Didn't really put a ton of yards behind it, but I mean, you can lock down 8 or so points in the passing game as a running back. It's interesting to think about. I think at his price, I don't even know his price. It has to be around Brian Hill, which would be like make him an interesting pivot depending on if ownership core kind of moves in on him. So I can pull there. He's 4,600. I want to say Brian Hill's 49. So yeah, like an interesting price pivot, but it's like I don't know, it's tough to play any player on a Jeff Driscoll offense.
Yeah, I'm with you. The 4,600, like I'm not really thinking about playing Jeff Driscoll in tournaments, but to 3x, what does he need? Like 13 points, 4x.
Well, I was talking about J.D. McKissic. Is Jeff Driscoll also 4,600 or?
He's 4,600. Yeah, that's pretty cheap. Like
wow. Cowboys
defense is like obviously the Cowboys secondary like really isn't great. Obviously, I really don't want to play Jeff Driscoll, but if you from a tournament perspective, like you have to like kind of kick over every rock. So
yeah. Would not be the worst quarterback I've ever played. There's no way.
Yeah, he might be close though.
Yeah, no, close.
Yeah, easily close. I have his projection around 15, so that's like right. Actually, I have his projection at 17.
Yeah, I don't know about that, good sir.
I don't know, man.
17 points, fresh U.S. grade points.
Yeah, it would be. Wow.
Yeah.
That's like not. That can't be right.
I would bet against. I would take the under on that. Is all I'd say. Outside of that, though, I kind of agree. If Jeff Driscoll plays, it's hard to see Dallas being forced to really play much offense, like we saw with the Bears last week. So yeah, Zeke would make a ton of sense correlating with the defense.
That can't be right, dude.
No, it's definitely not right. In no universe is that right. So while you looking,
dude, like Jeff Driscoll and McKissic are popping. Like
McKissic does not. I mean, well, Jeff Driscoll is a starting quarterback at 4,600. Makes sense as a value, and McKissic
correlates well with McKissic, and he's projecting for 17.95.
That's a bad projection. don't think that's a good
I
projection.
trust this projection more than I trust any projection you're looking at. I'd hate to break it to you, but
I will bet the under if he starts. We'll talk about this Sunday morning. I'll bet unders on that.
All right, we can do that.
We don't, honestly though, Matthew Stafford could end up playing. Who knows? So let's move to the next game. We've got Jets versus Washington. 38.5 point total has moved up, but I haven't looked. I'm sure it's the lowest total of the slate by a solid margin. But
that looks like the projection. Holy. Yeah.
If you trust that projection, you slam him in at 4,600. That's just free money.
I trust it. You got to figure like Dallas secondary has been pretty bad. So like if McKissick's chalky, like I guess it correlates, and I don't know.
I don't think McKissick will be chalky just because we'll have Brian Hill, who we'll talk about. But I mean, it could happen. Sure.
Yeah, Brian Hill's a lock. But
yeah. All right, let's get into our next game. Most because it's easy to kind of move off of for me. It's Washington versus the Jets. Washington 1 point home favorite. Second time they've been favored this season, and they didn't cover last time. Both teams have implied team totals of under 20. Dwayne Haskins is starting, and he's been atrocious this year in a bit of a limited sample, so it's hard for me to play any of these Washington receivers. Terry McLaurin, I guess, would be, for that reason, would be an interesting tournament play, and he's getting all the air yards pretty much regardless of who throws it. There's nobody else on this team to throw it to, so I think he's a fine play. On the Jets side, I don't know, man. They're not a great football team. I don't think Le'Veon Bell is worth his price. You could always talk me into playing Robbie Anderson. Any other plays in this game?
Not really. I think you kind of hit the nail on the head pretty much. I don't really want to roster anyone from Washington. Don't really want to roster anyone from the Jets. So, yeah.
I mean, when a game has a total below 40 and it's a more open slate than it has been in the past few weeks. We had the 6-team bye last week, and then the week before that was just a bad slate. I'm fine with fading this game entirely. Let's move on to a much better game. Tampa Bay hosting New Orleans Saints. Tampa are 5-point home dogs. It is a 50-point total. Last week, I don't think neither Mike Evans nor Chris Godwin really went off. It was OJ Howard week, kind of. I think he had 15-point game. The thing is that Cameron Brate has played 15 and 11 snaps in the past 2 weeks. It appears as though their strategy right now is that they are using him basically just in 2 tight end sets. OJ Howard played 84 of 85 snaps. So at that point, very interested in OJ Howard on one of my least favorite slates we've had for tight end. I think he's 3,600. There's just not any good really solid tight end play. So I think OJ Howard firmly in play, even in cash, if you can project Cameron Brate to keep not getting used, which has happened the past 2 weeks. So good matchup in terms of just good game environment for any pass catcher. You love catching passes from Jameis Winston. So I guess that's where I'd start. Any interest in what is your interest rather in the receiving game options? Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, and OJ Howard firmly in play there.
OJ Howard would definitely be fine to kind of go to in tournaments. I'm still a little skeptical on Howard. I know he had a great game versus a team that pretty much streams tight ends. Mike Evans, I don't really like to roster him versus New Orleans. Marcus Lattimore, he kind of struggles with. Chris Godwin is someone I don't mind going back to versus New Orleans team that struggles versus slot receivers. Rashad Perryman looks too cheap at 3,200 for tournaments. I don't mind Winston either. It's fantasy football, not real football, so you can play Winston. In New Orleans, pretty much Kamara burned a lot of people last week. Don't mind going to him. I know that Tampa Bay is really strong versus the run. I don't care. It's Alvin Kamara, and he's cheap, too cheap. That's an $800 difference from what we've seen last week. So, yeah, I don't mind Alvin Kamara at all. Michael Thomas at 9,900. Now you finally have to make a decision. I definitely prefer Kamara. I don't know if I'm paying up for Thomas, but he's still at a point where he's getting so much of the usage in tournaments. He's fine. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, no, that absolutely is pretty much it. For me, Michael Thomas, I will probably just, especially in cash, I just don't even pay up that much. I get that he has been just the absolute best. He's hit 11 targets, and this is 5 straight games. He's had 13 target games 4-5 times this season. I still just think, for a wide receiver, I think this is the second highest a receiver's ever been on DK. I don't know, probably just not paying that when I think there are as good of plays, I guess, like as good or better points per dollar plays at like the 6 to 7K range that we'll talk about going forward. So probably not playing him. I love that sweet Alvin Kamara call though.
Yeah.
All right, our next game on the slate, we've got Denver versus Minnesota. Minnesota are home favorites of 10.5 points, a 40.5 point total. I mean, I doubt Adam Thielen is back. I don't know if he's practicing or not, but I think the plan is at this point to let him rest. They have a bye next week. I believe it's the last set of byes in the season, maybe one more week after that. But yeah, the plan is to rest him this week and give him the bye week after that to rest. So I don't think he'll be playing this week. At that point, Stephon Diggs firmly in play. I think, though, the game environment probably just puts me on Dalvin Cook, though.
Yeah, I think Dalvin Cook's a really strong play. Definitely think that he's someone that I want to roster versus Denver with the spread being what it is. Don't mind Minnesota defense versus Brandon Allen. Like, I think that's a pretty easy correlation. Maybe the Vikings are even a little bit too cheap at 3,400 in this situation versus that offensive line. So, yeah, I like that Dalvin call correlating him with Vikings D. I'm not going to use Diggs. I get it. Not going to use him. No one on Denver, though. I'm not. Maybe Noah Fant, but
yeah, I was going to say Noah Fant for me at 3,700 is actually kind of got a price up. I think in tournaments it's fine, especially with his ADOT. Like last, I guess this wasn't super ADOT fueled. I think he broke off a long one, but like he's got run after the catch ability, like we saw the last time we saw him play. I think it was 2 weeks ago where he broke off that long run, ended up going for over 100 yards and scored. And before that, he had a pretty high ADOT, and he's incredibly athletic. So in tournaments, I don't mind running him back with Dalvin Cook, running Dalvin Cook back with him. But outside of that, yeah, not awfully interested in the rest of these guys.
No, I'm with you. Let's hop into the next game.
Next game, Lamar Jackson, who's kind of, I think he is entering the territory that we've been talking about with Michael Thomas and Christian McCaffrey over the past few weeks, where it just seems like both fantasy sites, FD and DraftKings, are just so slow to really price him up before you have to consider to play him or not. 70-something, 78, 7,700 on DraftKings. They are 4.5 point home favorites against Houston, 49 point total. For me, it's with the Brian Hill value we'll talk about later, Deebo Samuel value. I'll probably just be going to Lamar Jackson again in cash.
Yeah, it makes sense, right? He's pretty much unbelievable. He's like a fourth running back. The rushing equity's through the roof, 7,700 fine. What do you think about it? Like, we're trying to aggregate pretty much 70 touches from our running backs in terms of like that's what we'd like to get in cash, right? Like, so Lamar Jackson pretty much is just added equity there. And if you can kind of find that, which I think you can on the slate, with guys like Hill, Dalvin Cook, even Zeke for that matter, like it's easy just to kind of try to get to Jackson. I think he's pretty much just a lock button for me at cash, even at 7,700. Is that a bad take? I feel like, I don't know.
I mean, there are some players I would consider. Kyle Allen right now as he's popping, and I think his matchup is so good. But like, I'm probably still going Lamar Jackson.
Like 70, like I don't know if I want to say lock button. Like I think that's egregious to just say he's a lock, but I don't know. The rushing equity's through the roof, and I don't know. It's debatable. We'll see as the week kind of progresses. I really like him though.
Yeah, he's my favorite quarterback in cash right now, and it's by a significant margin. I'm not just like locking him in and forgetting about it. Like, I think there's a strong argument for Kyle Allen. I think Deshaun Watson in the same game environment that's supposed to have a lot of scoring is fine. But yeah, for me, Lamar Jackson is probably, barring any like major changes, be running him in cash. I just think, like you said, you're getting so many touches locked in. I think right now he's on pace for 1,200 rushing yards. He scored a touchdown in I think every game but one, whether it be through the air or through the ground. So yeah, like lock button, I don't know. There are few players that I would call a lock button right now, but he's up there. So that's fine. I think Hollywood Brown, probably not in cash, but Hollywood Brown is a guy who I will always be looking to run him back with. Don't believe he scored last week, but he put up a pretty solid game. Maybe he did score. I don't remember. No, I think he did score. He didn't have the 100-yard bonus, which is kind of annoying. But he will be a guy who I'm always looking to in tournaments, especially when I run Lamar Jackson. I'm probably either running Mark Andrews or Hollywood Brown, and potentially both. Like we saw last week that both of them can get there. So I think running both of them is more plausible in this game, actually. I think it makes a lot of sense in this game where I expect the Texans to not have problems scoring points. I expect there to be a lot of plays in general run just because both teams are going to be dueling for points. So I don't mind double stacking them and running them. Like I just don't mind stacking this game with a ton of players, honestly.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't mind stacking it all either. I think it's a really good game to stack. Yeah, that's pretty much it. What do we have next?
Next, we have Buffalo versus Miami. Miami are at home, and they're 5.5-point dogs. Totals come up 2 points to 41. Right now, there are like 2 players I think are playable on Miami. It's Mike Gesicki and it's Devontae Parker. I don't want to say worried, but I think there's a legitimate argument that Tre'Davious White could shut down Parker, mostly because Parker's not that good of a receiver. He's not awfully efficient. This isn't a great passing game. We saw them, I want to say they threw for under 200 last week. I don't know, not too interested in any of them. Kalen Ballage got 20 carries and like 4 targets last week and put up like under 50 yards. He's so bad. I'm glad we talked about him last week about how he's going to get a good amount of volume and that he's just awful and you can't play him because that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
It was like, yeah, he'll probably get a lot of volume and he's very bad and it's not a good offense. Don't worry about it. Forget about it. And like that is exactly what happened. And that could happen again this week, or he could get less touches and he'll still be bad.
Any love for the off receiver today on the Miami side? Albert Wilson, Jakeem Grant, favorable game script. I think Gesicki is someone like I definitely probably have interest in cash games. Is that an egregious take? I don't think he's seen the target share that the previous 2 weeks last week, but at 3,500. I don't know. This is one of my first times kind of really digging into the slate. So.
No, my guess would be that he did see the target share last week. He got 6 targets, which is pretty high for him. What was that?
What did he do with them?
He didn't do a lot. He fumbled at the beginning too, which hurt. But I think they still ran him after that, which is nice to see that he fumbled and they were still fine trotting him out there. Yeah, he put up 3 for 28. Didn't really do much, but they didn't have a really productive offensive game. And given that I think Fitzpatrick threw for like 170 or something, I would guess he didn't throw the ball a ton. So I think at 6 targets, he actually probably saw a pretty high target share. So yeah, no, I think the off receiver in this case is probably just Mike Gesicki at 3,500. I think, again, in consideration for cash, just given the volume he's getting. I get it's on Miami, but at tight end, which is a thin position this week, I'll be paying 3,500 for him. I'm comfortable doing that.
Yeah, it makes sense. I don't hate that call.
On the other side, is it finally John Brown week? Because I feel like we've been waiting for it forever. We got like a mini John Brown week 1. It was like 25 or so points, but really we haven't had it yet. And he's still getting the targets in the air yards. The last time we saw him was, I believe, it was last week against the Browns. 11 targets, but wasn't able to convert into much. Went 5 for 77. He's gotten over 50 yards in every single game this season and has not topped 83. I don't know. It has to be coming. I have to believe it's coming. And of course, against Miami, it's totally like this would be the week it would happen. So.
No, yeah, I get it. I don't mind John Brown. Don't mind Josh Allen. This would be a really great spot to play Josh Allen versus Miami defense. Josh Allen was probably another guy you can consider in cash games this week. It's way too close on the maybe jump the Lamar Jackson train too quickly. John Brown's priced up, but he's going to get it done eventually, so I don't mind that. Yeah, that's a pretty good call. Dawson Knox, I don't hate for tournaments. That would be pretty much it.
I know he was splitting time pretty significantly with one of the other washed-up veterans they have there. Do you know if that's gone up in the past at all? Because that would be the scenario in which I'd be really interested in playing.
I don't know if it's gone up.
He went 40 of 69 snaps. That's well over half and got 6 targets last week. Yeah, I think that's a good spot to be ahead of the usage coming as opposed to behind looking back on it. So I like that call, especially if you're running Josh Allen. He's super cheap. So, yeah, I like that call.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see what game we have next. Looks like this is another one without a determined spread yet. It's Jacksonville versus Indy. Jacoby Brissett, all signs, though, are that he plays. Right now, I have Indy as 2.5-point favorites with a 43.5-point total. Oh, yeah, it has a line now. It just didn't have an opening. Yeah, 2.5-point favorites. The Colts are at home, 43.5-point total. Right now, if the season ended today, Leonard Fournette would have the 4th most scrimmage yards with 1 or less touchdowns. Is that ever going to change? Or is he just not a touchdown scorer?
He might just not be a touchdown scorer. I'm being sarcastic, but
it really feels like it. But
really feels like it.
Man, it really does. But like, I don't know. Like we saw it was literally Julio Jones last year had 0 touchdowns in the first 8, and then went 7 or 8 in the next 8 or something like that. Yeah. I don't know. I have to believe everything in my brain says these things tend to not hold, like these crazy outlier performances, even over what we think is a large sample of 8 games. It's really not. So I think Leonard Fournette probably, I don't know, the game environment for this one might not have me so enthused in cash, but at 7,900 for a guy who I think is top 3 in touches per game, getting a ton of game in the receiving work, cash consideration for me, especially when like Brian Hill clears up a lot of volume or a lot of salary. Deebo Samuel does the same, I think like 4K. So.
No, I get you. Yeah, I think that Westbrook's a pretty good play. Just he had a great rapport with Foles early in the preseason. So I like Westbrook. Don't mind Fournette. The Indy side, like there's absolutely no one I want to play. Is that fair?
Let me see what Zach Pascal's price is. He got priced up a week ago, and I wasn't doing. Dude, 5,800 for Zach Pascal.
I guess we could play him, but you said Deebo and.
Yeah, no, he's like, I don't know, he's not even close to like a good value on the slate. Like he's their number 1 receiver, but it's not a awfully interesting game. And Jacoby Brissett hasn't been throwing a ton of yards. It's mostly his fantasy points have come on touchdowns, which I'm probably not trying to bank on touchdowns in cash. So, and in tournaments, like anything is mostly fine if you're getting volume and you're not super high owned, like if you provide decent leverage. So it's fine.
I'm with you. I'm not really on him.
Yeah, I think you could run like one player from each team. You could run a Fournette and Zach Pascal, or like, I don't know, you could run Dede and Pascal. Both tight ends are fine, but they don't really have a high, like we saw last week, Ebron got like double-digit targets, but Reich came out, Frank Reich was very clear. He was like, the reason Ebron got on so much was one because of the injuries at receiver, but he also liked the way that Ebron specifically matched up with the defense they were facing. Like he made it clear that last week was a very specific situation. I don't think we see that from that many. I would bet against seeing that many targets from Ebron again at any point this season.
All right. Yeah, makes sense. I liked Ebron a little last week. I wish I kind of got him more. What's the next game we got up next?
The next game we have is the Falcons versus the Panthers. Panthers 5.5-point home favorites. It's a 49.5-point total. I feel better about playing Christian McCaffrey this week as a home favorite against one of the premier pass catching running back opponent teams in the Falcons than I did last week on the road against Green Bay. I think this is a much better spot to pay up 10.5 for him. I still think there's always that argument to fade him in tournaments because last week, he hit like 29 or 30, which was fine. It didn't sink you in cash games. It was right about value, like 29, but you need your guys to just completely go off. And that's not going off for like a GPP win. So I think you can always fade a guy at over 10K in tournaments, or at least be with the field at best on him.
Yep.
In cash, I'm probably getting to him.
Yeah, it makes sense. I don't know. Yeah, I'm pretty much. 1 sec. Sorry, I lost the page. Yeah, I'm playing McCaffrey in cash.
My next thought is, I guess I feel like there are a lot of good Panthers values. Kyle Allen I have right now projecting as one of the best values on the slate at quarterback. That is still probably going to Lamar Jackson because he gets so much rushing equity by playing him. And I like the game environment probably as much as this game. I think the price is just worth paying up for, but I think Kyle Allen's a fine play. I'll probably be overweight on him in tournaments if I don't end up playing him in cash. It's really the receivers that it comes down to, and there's a bunch of good receiving options. DJ Moore averaging, I think, 10 targets over the past 4 games, back-to-back games with a 100-yard bonus. He is, like 50-something hundred. I can pull it up, I want to say it's like 59.
Yeah.
I still think that's underpriced. I mean, he's gotten 10 targets a game in the past 4 games, and this seems to be like a paced up spot against an awful pass defense. I think you can run a lot of Panthers. Like it was a few weeks ago that people were running like 4 Panthers in cash, and that lineup was really good. I think this is a similar spot.
Yeah, definitely. I think DJ Samuel kind of give you that ability pretty much to do that. So if you want to, you can. Kyle Allen, you have the value. It's fine. Do we want to run it back? Yeah, Brian Hill.
We should obviously, just touch on Brian Hill because there's not
lock button play.
Yeah, there's not much of a decision to be made. He got 20 carries last week. I get it was favorable, but I think the signal there is what was that?
He's actually pretty good too.
Yeah, he's like legitimately like he's a guy who crushes every preseason, like just like looks and performs like one of the best players, and coaches just don't seem to want to get him involved. And he looks fine when he gets on the NFL field, like in regular season. So
he's going to take that job.
Dude, it could happen. Devonta Freeman's old and injured every single season. 20 carries last week compared to Kenyon Barner's 2 targets. I don't think Kenyon Barner got any. That's really the most important thing to me is that he got like all the receiving game work out of the backfield. It wasn't much, but market share wise, it was all of it. And basically all the carries too after Freeman left. So they seem to want to anoint him the guy. At that point, you lock him into cash. My only question is he like the Jalen Samuels type lock for you where you're playing 150 lineups, you're playing 150 Jalen Samuels?
I honestly, I'm playing 150 Brian Hill. Like I just don't see. Yeah, I think it's the easiest play on the slate.
Austin Hooper out. He is expected to be out for a month. Only matters for us this week because we're looking at week 11. I really don't think that volume trickles down to either of Jaden Graham or Luke Stalker. Luke Stalker, traditional blocking tight end, and Jaden Graham is like mostly a special teamer. I think more so we get some extra targets to the slot for Russell Gage, who's already been getting like a decent amount of volume over the past handful of weeks since Mohamed Sanu's out. And I think it makes Julio Jones a great option to run it back with because Julio is averaging like mid to low 20% target share, maybe like even high 20, but last season he was well above 30. So yeah, I think it's like mid to high 20s. And last season he was well above 30% target share. I think he finally might be able to get back up there because it seems like Austin Hooper is clearly the new thing, like the one additive they have in this offense from last year that they didn't in the sense that he wasn't performing this way. So I think this is a good spot for Julio to get like 35% plus of the team's targets.
Yeah, I see it. It's just I don't think construction's going to lead me to him. Like I feel like you can just walk in McCaffrey and Brian Hill because they just run back together. I don't know. You could fade. You could obviously. I'm not going to walk in McCaffrey, but I think I'll definitely be with the field. Yeah, it's interesting. McCaffrey's ownership is definitely going to be, like just he's McCaffrey, and then on top of it you have Brian Hill sort of run it back. It's going to be even more inflated than what it would be. So maybe fading it isn't the worst play. Ways to do that. I don't know, maybe taking like a Samuel or DJ Moore. I don't know. I'm just kind of went off on a tangent.
Yeah, I mean, it's I kind of like that as DJ. Like basically, you just want one of the if you get a receiver on this team that scores 2 touchdowns, that almost out of necessity makes McCaffrey a bad play. The team needs to score like 5 at that point for McCaffrey to get there because he needs to in the tournament basically score twice. So if you take DJ Moore and he happens to get 2 touchdowns from like the 10-yard line or whatever, and McCaffrey just gets the 100-yard bonus, that's probably the scenario in which fading McCaffrey but still leveraging it with other players on team works out. So
yeah, interesting. It's definitely more in play because it's in Carolina and not Atlanta. If that makes more sense. Like even though they're at home, like I know they're the home running back. Like usually it would be kind of the other way around, but I wouldn't want to fade McCaffrey in a dome where I could see definitely fading him, or being more apt to fade him it's so weird because he's a home favorite and he's the best running back in the league, but he's also 10-5.
You know, and he's also going to be super highly owned because, like you said, it's so easy to get up to him with Brian Hill. And I think Deebo Samuel is a cash game lock too. He's a cash game lock for me. Nothing's going to change that throughout the week. Honestly, even if Emmanuel Sanders plays, I don't think he's going to. I would still probably play Deebo Samuel.
Yeah. No, I definitely.
Because Kittle was ruled out a few hours ago. So.
Kittle was ruled out too. Holy shit!
Emmanuel Sanders has not been ruled out. That was the thing.
Nice.
But my guess would be that he is. At which point, I guess we can get into that game next. I guess Kittle, I believe, was ruled out like right before I hopped on Sirius XM with Bob Harris. If Emmanuel Sanders is ruled out, Kittle is already ruled out. I think it's generally good process to fade chalk wide receivers because their bust rates are so much higher. You can get a lot of leverage. But Deebo Samuel would project to be one of the best like points per dollar plays of the season. Would you still consider fading him in tournaments even then?
No.
It just, yeah, I struggle to. I still think it's much like the running back plays that we talk about. Like you're getting so much volume against such an awful defense. Yeah. All right. From the Arizona side,
it'd be really tough.
What?
It'd be really tough to do that.
From the Arizona side, I'm pretty much just going to cross out David Johnson. Got less work in the receiving game, and I think even the rushing game was awfully inefficient. Like, might have had negative points, depending on your scoring format. I think he had negative points. Basically, rushed for a handful of yards in the fumble. Dude looks like, man, he looks bad. David Johnson, the mighty have fallen. I think Kenyon Drake at this point is in play, and I don't know what his price is, but
yeah, I get you. Yeah. Tevin Coleman at 61. Like if you're taking Sanders and Kittle out, and Debo's going to be the chalk, like I can.
Breed is out too.
Breed is out. Yeah, Tevin Coleman's like a lock.
Yeah, no, it's I think that's pretty smart. I want to see. I think the interesting thing.
Duplicate lineups.
Yeah, gross. I think the interesting thing maybe would to like look to. I don't know. Raheem Mostert's an interesting play. I doubt he gets very highly owned just because he's like he's typically a third string running back. So even though he probably steps into the Breida role, I think maybe an interesting pivot just to be vultures a touchdown.
Yeah. No, I'm with you.
From the Arizona side, it's
in terms of like he can catch passes as well. So
yeah. Also, another team preseason on top of Brian Hill.
Yeah.
Christian Kirk from the other side didn't get priced up enough. He's 5,700 last week. He saw 10 targets. That is his fourth game of double-digit targets, and he missed 3 games in the middle of the season. Probably got injured in one of them as well, so missed like probably 3.5. I don't know if he's necessarily a cash game lock, just because we've seen how stifling the horizontal air raid can be. But last week did not affect him at all. Man, wish I had more of him.
Yeah, I get that.
And I even had a decent amount of him because we talked about him either on this show or the Sunday morning show. I was like, yo, some fat TD regression coming. And I was like, with the field.
No, makes sense.
So, yeah, I think 5,700 in play for cash. I don't, you don't like the San Francisco matchup, but the volume he's getting trumps matchup for me.
Yeah, no, that's always usage is definitely go to.
Player, I think we talked about this a few weeks ago, just generally being ahead of the curve. Player I want to be ahead of the curve on is Andy Isabella, especially if people are going to be, like, obviously Deebo Samuel, basically a cash game lock. Christian Kirk will probably be in a lot of cash game lineups. I mean, these are lineups that will be getting played in tournaments as well, I guess that's the point. Andy Isabella getting continually stepping up the volume he's getting. Last week, he saw 3 targets. It's not a lot, but he's also like a pretty efficient player. He's actually right now, I think, one of the most efficient player of all time in terms of yards per target. It's not a lot of targets because they didn't want to use him, but played for, I think it's just over a third of the team snaps. When you get on the field with Kyler Murray for a third of the snaps, anything can happen. I think in larger field tournaments, if you play basically anybody in this game because they're going to be so chalky, I have to run it back with Isabella.
I was going to say that seems like a pretty small sample size.
No, yeah, I think that's the bit, but he's good. It's literally the small sample size. It's probably like 10 targets.
Yeah, seems extremely small.
I think the important thing is playing a decent amount of snaps on a game that people are going to be stacking.
No, I get you. I be ahead of the curve. I just don't. Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, it's one of the. Yeah, he's fine. I just don't know if I'd get there.
Next game on the slate. Let's see. Philadelphia at home, 3.5-point dogs, 44.5-point total. Philly, I think Alshon Jeffrey was banged up in practice maybe. Zach Ertz finally went off last week after being one of the most high volume tight ends. I think he's fine right now. I'm seeing him projected as one of the better tight end plays, but against the New England defense, I don't know, especially the way this offense has looked. Carson Wentz has looked pretty middle of the road without Deshaun Jackson. They just don't have a lot of ways to attack a defense. It's a lot of short passing game with Aguilar running out of the slot, with Dallas Goedert and Zach Ertz getting so much usage. Tight ends just don't run these deep routes. I think they're kind of a one-dimensional offense. He's a fine play. He projects well, but for me, I'm probably just staying away from the Eagles side of things.
Yeah, I think you can stay away from the Eagles side of things outside of possibly Ertz. Just contrarian to pay up for in tournaments, so I don't hate Ertz. I also actually don't hate Miles Sanders. It's just tough to run Jordan Howard into a wall. They're obviously going to be playing from behind. You could see work in the passing game. So he might be someone at 4,100. It could be pretty interesting, I feel like. In builds that you might want to spend up to a higher priced receiver. On the New England side, James White, Edelman, Dorsett, Brady, I think they're all very much in play. Philly really struggles versus the pass. They funnel the pass. Brady's definitely in play for tournaments. I definitely wouldn't say cash, but definitely tournaments, maybe cash. Yeah, pretty much it.
I would probably say if I had to, I guess this will be news that we'll talk about Sunday morning. N'Keal Harry might suit up for the first time. If there's any coach speak that he projects to cut into Philip Dorsett's role, I would probably just eliminate those guys and look to Edelman or James White. But yeah, against one of the worst pass defense in the league, I really like Miles Sanders' call this week. The game script would set up well for him, and he's one of the highest players in terms of air yards. The handful of times he gets on the field, they actually let him run these deep fly routes and stuff out of the backfield, these long wheel routes. So I really like that call. I like running it back with a Brady Edelman stack.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, but I think that's a really sharp tournament call.
Next game on the slate, our last one, I believe. It is Oakland Raiders hosting the Bengals. Raiders are 10.5-point favorites, 48.5-point total. I don't know, pretty much for me, right off any Bengals. I think Joe Mixon got a ton of work last week, but I don't know. It's interesting because if you project what happened last week to happen this week, where the Bengals get crushed, and you project them to give up, dude, Joe Mixon got 30 carries last week.
Yeah, no, I get it.
It's just so interesting. They just it's so incredible that a team gave up that much, that they were just let's grind out the clock and call the game at halftime, that they got Joe Mixon 30 carries.
Yeah. I wonder how'd he do?
He had 114 yards. He hit the bonus, and he also caught 2 passes. Didn't score because they don't score, but
yeah, no, I get that.
I don't know. The running backs that don't catch a ton of passes because Gio actually gets work in super negative game script. I mean, I guess they could give up again, but it's just generally bad process for me. So not doing it. I get the argument because we saw last week that exact thing happened. I'm not doing it. Tyler Boyd, I'm kind of at this point willing to just write off. Is the Bengals offense is so bad that no matter how many targets he gets, that's probably not a good play.
Yeah.
It's a shame too, because he gets so many of the targets and he was a good player last year. Yeah. I don't know.
I think Boyd and Finley are in play. Total's 49. If you're gonna,
that is almost exclusively concentrated on Oakland. I think I would Boyd's in play because he gets so many targets. I think Finley. I don't know how much is Finley.
Finley's not in play.
Yeah. Boyd though, yeah, you're probably right. I get that he doesn't get a lot of targets, but it really just takes one target to make a player's day. Yeah. That's a fine play. And the Oakland defense has been pretty not great this year. So, and Oakland stacks are very viable. So one way to get different with them.
The secondary's been awful. So I don't want to play Finley, but this is going to be low owned. Extremely low owned. It's a horrible spot.
Yeah. All right. Back on Boyd this week. Doing it again. Ooh. Oakland stacks also very viable. I think Derek Carr in play, as he's been many times this week, but against, at this point, easily the worst team in the NFL. I think they're pretty much 3 plays to run him back with Hunter Renfrow, but I'd honestly just rather run him back with a higher variance, like higher A-dot play, like Tyrell Williams, or just acquire all of the targets at the tight end position by going Darren Waller. So
yeah, it makes sense.
Josh Jacobs in play in tournament, but for me in cash, like you can lock up the same amount of carries and probably the same amount of targets by playing Brian Hill. That is, he doesn't get a ton of targets.
Yeah, Brian Hill's lock button.
Yeah, I just think like, I don't know if I'm paying as much. Josh Jacobs right now is just below 7K. At that point, you can get 3 down backs for that much. So,
all right, sounds good. Any questions?
Yeah, I don't know if we have. Amel said something, but I think that was, I don't know, or I can drop Jay Sternberger or Dawson Knox. I kind of like Knox though.
I like Andrews.
I have Mark Andrews and OJ. Am I missing like the first half of this question?
Yeah, I don't know.
If you have Mark Andrews and OJ Howard, don't add another tight end. I feel like I'm missing the first half of the question, but based on the context, you don't need another tight end. I don't know. Add a defense that plays Miami 2 weeks from now or whatever.
Yep. No, I'm with you.
No questions in the questions section, so I think that is it. Oh, if you're talking DFS, then do you know about Prize Picks? It sounds familiar. It might not be allowed in my state. There are a few DFS things that aren't allowed in my state. Prize Picks. What do you think Prize Picks is, Bobby?
I have no idea.
Oh, yeah. Prize Picks, I think, is not allowed. Yep, I looked at it. It's basically you bet over-unders on player projections, and then you parlay them. And the thing, my only thought is, I first looked at this. I can't play it. You can't play it in Ohio. My first thought is you can parlay a player's first half projection with their game-long projection. That feels like you're doubling your odds on basically the same projection.
I have no interest in doing all that work to play that.
I looked at it and tried to play it, and I can't in my state. If you're talking DFS and you know about Prize Picks, I do, but I can't look at it like in my state, so it doesn't matter.
All right.
And on that amazing note, but I seriously, if you actually want to play Prize Picks, look into parlaying the same player's first half score with their total score. You're just like doubling your odds almost for free. There's like some variance in there, but that's probably how I play it. So with that very esoteric and almost useless piece of knowledge, I'd love to bring us to a close. For myself, at Kyle Tweets here. For Bobby Gomes, at Bobby Gomes DFS. Guys, check us out Sunday Eastern, 9 a.m., right? 9 a.m. I think Emmanuel Sanders will be a big piece of news we have to deal with. Jeff Driscoll, Matt Stafford, one of them. Brissett is set to play, but that could come to a change. I think that's probably most of it. So get all the news. And, of course, as we dig deeper throughout the week, we'll come with even more knowledge. So, everybody, thanks for tuning in. We will catch you Sunday morning.
Later, guys.